I covered eyes, noses, lips, and now it's time to talk about eyebrows. I will share everything I learned so far about drawing eyebrows and what you might want to avoid in order to create better portraits. All my other tutorial videos as well as the materials I'm using are in the description, and now let's jump right in. So when you're sketching your portrait with whatever method works for you and it's time to tackle the eyebrows, my tip would be to not think of the eyebrows as two separate features, but to combine them into one line. This will help you a lot with the proportions of the face you're drawing because it keeps your focus more on the overall facial structure than on individual shapes. If you jump right into capturing the exact shape and movement of the eyebrows, this just leaves a lot of room for mistakes because it depends more on your personal judgment than on the facial structure as a whole. It can result in uneven facial proportions. Now, you might ask, how and why do you combine the two eyebrows? And I'll show you with these reference photos. The goal is to generalize the eyebrow structure into one horizontal line, and to do that, I pay closer attention to these edge points where the tail and the arch meet. Not the outer end of the eyebrow, as this will mislead you for the rest of the proportions, but this meeting point will give you a good base. It also visualizes the tilt of the head, so even if you're not drawing from references, this guideline will give you a good indication for constructing the rest of the face. Before we continue, I just want to mention that I have an online shop where I sell some of my originals and lots of fine art clay prints to choose from. This content I upload is only possible with your support, and the best way to support an artist is, of course, to buy their art. So I'd highly appreciate it if you check out my website, and who knows, you might find something which fits exactly into your home. And again, thank you for all your support. Now back to the video. Once you're done with the general construction, you will want to define the shape of the eyebrows a bit more. Now it's easy to get tempted to jump right into drawing beautifully curved designs and to really capture the character of the eyebrows you see on your reference, or whatever you want to draw from imagination. Maybe you already think about the emotions you want this face to show, like super angry or sad, but what elevated my portrait drawings was to not do this right now, but instead, stay in the field of straight lines. Straight lines simplify and generalize. I know you will probably hear this all the time, but the advantage straight lines have is that you really have to focus on the essence and the actual direction of lines. You can and will round these straight lines later, but if you immediately start with nicely defined curved lines, it's harder to correct and you're emotionally more attached to those designed lines you put down. Staying with the straight lines will make you stay in a more logical state of mind, which makes it easier to correct yourself and focus on the basics. So what I like to do to construct the eyebrows is to work with what I already established, which is that brow line from earlier. I can now divide this line to define the size of the gap between the eyebrows. For the actual eyebrows, I like to work with two segments for the base construction. Now this is the part which can kind of leave this construction line a bit because now we're looking at the actual positioning of the brows within or around this horizontal line. And with these two segments, I can also define the thickness of the brows. This approach prevents you from diving into too much detail at the start and gives you a solid foundation to work with. In later steps, you can then carve out smaller shapes and round up these edges. So when you have your eyebrow shape, I know it's tempting to start drawing all the hair, but I would like for you to hold on a second before you do that. The reason is that if you go ahead now and place all those single hair strands, the contrast will be pretty high. It will almost look like the person has black hair because it will stand out so much on top of the white unshaded paper. What I like to do now is to actually fill in the whole eyebrow shape with graphite and also to blend it into the surrounding area. The reason for this is simply that all the hair throws shadow. This is not a flat area with some hair sitting on top. And this basic shade also gives you more creative control over the next step, in which you can decide which spot to flesh out. With a bit of base shade, you feel less forced to fill in every single area with hair strands, and you can purposely place hair strands and leave them out to create more character. Okay, now to the part where we actually create the eyebrows. What you need here is a bit of basic knowledge if you're a beginner. Thinking about hair growth, you need to be able to draw a dynamic line and control your pressure. Hair doesn't have the same thickness throughout. You need to let it fade out. So if you're new to drawing, try to get used to change the pressure on your pencil and practice the fading out. The second thing, and this isn't just something for beginners, is that hair doesn't distribute evenly. Don't draw it too perfect with the same gap in between. This makes hair always look unnatural and inauthentic. When drawing organic, living things such as humans, animals, and nature, keep in mind there's always a certain degree of harmonic chaos involved. The only perfect things, if you can call it like that, is human-made technology, things like cars, buildings, etc. You can measure out perfectly and have everything precisely in its place, but organic, living things aren't perfect, and the moment you try to make them perfect, they will look fake. You can improve this immediately by varying the placement of the hair. Give it some of that harmonic chaos, and you'll see it will look much more true and authentic. I covered this a bit already in my eye tutorial, but hair clumps and groups. Don't think of hair as individual strokes. Let it clump together naturally and organic. And it's when you put these three basic things like pressure control, gap control, and this clumping, your eyebrows will definitely look more realistic. And even if your goal isn't realism, you can still incorporate this stylistic. Now let's take a look at the direction of hair growth. Beginners will often draw eyebrows like this. This of course is acceptable, but if you want to take it to the next level, take a look at this hair growth. Towards the tail, the hair actually grows towards the center. This shift in growth direction will give the whole brow more variety, but I still like to be careful and I'm not using too much pressure towards the tail. Of course it depends what you want to achieve. If you want to draw thin, subtle eyebrows, you keep it lighter with fewer hair clumps. If you want it bushy, you draw more hair, apply more pressure. But adding a certain variety in growth direction will give the eyebrows a more realistic character. The inner part of the eyebrow is where I like to let the hair clumps fade out by drawing less and less towards the center of the face. This lets the eyebrow end softer with bigger gaps in between the hair. Another thing I like to do is not only add more hair, but also create more gaps when I feel like everything is a bit too dense. I take my eraser pencil and sharpen it so I have a nice tip to use for details, and then just take away some of the graphite to make it look even more organic. And these are all my tips for drawing better eyebrows. I hope you found it useful, and of course, as always, let me know if you have anything to add for us. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.